We are rolling. So, hey, fabulous to have you on this call. And we are kind of doing a bit of a catch up, I think, personally here, because a lot has changed, I think, over the last few months for you. But we did a profiling session, kind of a bit of an ad hoc one, a little while back, and it's that data that I'm using right now for this call. So I know that initially you did a power profile. You got your first two strongest archetypes sort of made clear, made known. But we are now able to dive into the full archetype spectrum, which gives you a view of all six archetypes and where you sit with those. And this is just an opportunity to talk that through and see what that brings up. First of all, to confirm if that really does reflect who you are. I've tended to find, even though this is not a scientifically verified approach, I find that the more people I do it with, the more they confirm it really, really does work. And the reason for that is because it's built around values. And I find that understanding where people come from a values point of view, creating questions that elicit values from people really does a very, very good job in stating what's driving that individual at any point in time. Whilst we've said it can shift a little bit, but generally speaking, we are who we are. We don't go through major transformations, but we do evolve and we do change in relation to our environment and the needs that we see around us. But also sometimes there's something inside of us that just steps up and goes, no, this is now who I'm seeking to be in life. And we change the way we do life. We therefore change the results we get in life. And so what I find is these values are the drivers to all of those, and they're wrapped up in these six archetypal characters. So a little bit about you, Kath, and where you're at, and maybe a hint to the future, but maybe.
When did I see? I saw you in July or something, didn't I? I joined Murphy Cobb Consulting, which is the other side of advertising for me and production, in October. Mm-hmm. It took quite some time to get there because they work very much a consultant kind of manner. So in essence, they bring people on when they require people to lead new pieces of business. But indeed, I had conversations with them where they had the same reaction that you did when you met me, where they said, you can pretty much do anything. So we could bring you in on an operational role. We could bring you in on probably a production consulting. We could bring you in on a management role. But generally where we see your strongest strength for our business is a growth role.
Right. Yeah.
So when they've ever had a growth role at their business, they generally left the growth to the local market leaders, the business leaders, the CEO or the founder. And they invited me to come in from a new perspective, but also because I know so many people from the industry. And I joined them at the end of October as a chief growth officer.
Right.
So it's really, I love it. I mean, it's so interesting for me because you're back to using all of the knowledge that you have, but I'm in a completely different environment to being in advertising. So wow.
Yeah.
I'm able to really very clearly say, I know what I can do, how I can approach that problem. And I'm allowed to go and do it because it's where I have my expertise. Whereas when you're an advertising agency, there are so many other factors that affect whether or not you can actually run with a certain way of approaching a problem. Also, I found that even though I've only had one client meeting so far on Skype, they all said two client meetings so far. The result of both those meetings was, you have so much experience. It's so fascinating to hear. You really know what you're talking about. Yeah. And of course, the second thing, which you noticed, is, my God, you're passionate. And I think I withheld that passion I've withheld that passion throughout my process of speaking to people since January of this year. I withheld that passion when I would go into meetings with people. And what Murphy Cobb want me to do is unleash it as much as I can. And I find myself finding it very easy to unleash that passion.
Excellent. That's amazing news. Yeah,
it is. And so they call me the rainmaker, which is totally not true. It's just that it happens to be that since I joined, we've been getting a pitch coming in. We've been getting lots of traction with existing clients. We've been talking to new clients, and I'm able to kind of manage that process for them. And also, I know I'm very organized. I know I'm very thorough. So when we do a pitch presentation, our founder is very excited because he says, I've always had to do these, but get it all together and get the right people and push
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah, which for those guys, probably it takes such a weight off them that
It
they
does.
can then relax into the process, which
Yeah.
helps. I think desperate pitches are horrendous environments, aren't they? Whereas when you've got people who are just relaxed and they're able to relate, they notice people, they connect with people, and they're able to, have that bigger view and just,
Yeah.
I'll mention this now, I'll mention that, because you've taken the weight of that off them, is what I'm guessing. Is that
Yeah.
sort of thing happening?
Yeah. But also the amazing thing is, although it's not a big central team, the expertise is phenomenal. And I'm in an environment where you need to shout out that you have 25 years experience, Kath. My whole year has been just put down 15, don't have whole year has been like, so it's been so difficult from that perspective rather, of being a woman, being a senior woman in advertising, being a senior woman at all, Brexit, just generally, pushing you down a rabbit hole of where you're really uncomfortable and don't feel I don't feel like I was using certain jobs I was going into. So why do you want me here? I'm not the right person for this role. Oh, but we like your passion and we like your exuberance. Yeah, but I'm not the right, so.
Yeah.
And what I love is
Yeah.
I'm literally speaking to individuals who have been there, done that, understand. They're grown-ups. They're really fun, lovely, lovely group of mainly men, and then one superwoman. The ones that I know in my central team, but all just so passionate and so experienced.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the reputation of the consultancy is very strong. From that perspective, is that they're careful about who they bring into that family, so to speak.
Yeah, crucial. That culture is so important, isn't it? That's maintained, and the values drive the culture, and anybody you're bringing into that mix is either going to support and enhance that, or they're going to rub up against it. So it's a critical mix.
Because it's an entrepreneurial leader, his values are instilled in the whole company. So they only started in 2006, but I've known of him through the industry for a long time. I know lots of people that we both know. Now it happens to be I was in radio, he's in radio. It's his number one passion. Production's a passion. Like, there's so many passions anyway. So we naturally, and we work very, very similarly. So we work very well together. But I think his values definitely are instilled throughout the organization, and people respect and admire him greatly. And that makes a big difference.
Yeah, excellent.
Big difference. So I certainly see a big future with them. I see there's so many areas I can contribute to. Right, so I can contribute to all sorts of areas, including mentoring some of the younger staff. Including, the main thing is to get a new and exciting perspective out for 2020 for Murphy Cobb. So going out to events, increasing their profile we're going to do all sorts of events next year. We're going to do some team up with some people. We're going to do panels. We're going to move offices now over here to Hammersmith, which is like I can walk to work.
Excellent.
And it's a fantastic like more professional place, the WeWork that we're in. And we're just going to raise the profile and really start getting ahead of the trends in the industry. And they're really open to that, but they haven't had the manpower to do it, because they have so many strong clients, but they have people that have to run those clients. So it's wonderful to be able to come into a role where it's sort of, okay, do whatever you want, go ahead, do that. If you can do that, fine. I'm kind of back to that sweet spot. I don't work for them full time yet, but I'm hoping that I know that in the new year that's at least 4 days a week. Because that one day we come and do something like NLP or something else for my own personal growth. But yeah, it's been a strange year, but I'm glad that I held out to a point where I really found myself in a Kath position, a position that really feels right.
Yeah, and that was a point of discussion that we had a good few months back. It was a case of you really do have immediately, when I see a profile like yours, I think leadership immediately, and that does scare some people, especially from a woman. I hate to say it, you know that, you know that very well. I think you were the one who told me the phrase, it's all very good, bashing through the glass ceiling, but sometimes you get splinters, and that,
And,
unfortunately, a
and
lot of
yet,
women in your position have faced that
and yet,
previously.
my founder, Patrick Murphy, loves that. And the first time that we sat down, before I joined him, I did a pitch with him. I sat down, and then he took me out for lunch with a friend of his. And he said, first thing he said to his friend was, "I love this woman. She's tough and she takes things away from me." And then his friend said, "Pat really likes strong women." I said, "Yeah, but that's exactly the reason why I've ended up here.
Yeah,
He likes
yeah.
my straight talking. He likes the fact, give that to me and go away and do what you're supposed to be doing. And when I bring it back to you, it will be what you're expecting."
Mm,
So I needed to find that person. I needed to find,
mm,
I could have found him a long time ago, which is such a shame that I didn't I did actually see them 2 years ago, but they were just in a different space at that time, and they had different people on in the kind of operational growth roles. So yeah, he recognized that straight away. Straight away.
yeah. Excellent, excellent.
Yeah.
And when people look at their profile, they don't tend to be surprised, and yet it brings things into conversation that weren't necessarily identified or vocalized or defined in that sort of way. So, if I don't know if you are able to see the graphic that I sent through on
Yeah.
this, but essentially, sovereign is strongest with you. So you are a woman who can take responsibility for your realm. You expect to be given a territory, and you will thrive when you're told, this is what we're giving you, and get on with it. And in a sense, if you're not given a territory, you will carve out your own. and that's been a bit of the tussle here, is that the guys with the power have often been guys who've been a bit threatened by somebody like you. But
Yeah.
there are people out there who've got the insight and the foresight and the trust to give it to somebody of your capability. And that's seeing that sovereign in there at that level is, first of all, a clear indicator that you're a person who can be given a territory and being given trust of that territory. And the other thing is that all of your archetypes are above a 5. They're between 5 and 8, or 5 and 7.5. And because of that sort of clear, they're all within a certain bandwidth. And because of that immediately speaks leadership to me. If you've got somebody who's strong with several, but really low on the others, they may actually have a leadership position. They may have been able to make certain things work, but because of the imbalance between some and the other, the polarity that we see, even if there's one or two of them just significantly lower, they're going to struggle in that area. That people will relate to them and say they've got none of that jester. So they don't know how to relax. They don't know how to enjoy the journey. It's just all drive, 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 and you've got the drive, but it's interesting that the jester's in there. The jester's number 4 and only just under the sage. So if I was to sum up your profile from what I see here, is first of all, its leadership is really strong with you. You're all the way across the board. You're strong there. But if you were having a conversation, if you were looking at a new area that you needed to get your mitts onto, this is kind of the conversation I'm imagining that you have in your head. But these questions, I will give them in specific order, but there's actually very little between them. So one may come a little bit before the other. Sometimes people have profiles that are much more varied, and I can very easily tell how they're going to be driven as they go into a situation. But first of all, you're looking at the big picture, the big vision, and saying, what's our direction? Where are we heading? Yeah. With that, there's immediately a sense of who are the people that are helping us with that. There's a sense of that team thing, what areas of responsibility are involved in this whole mix. What's our domain that we're operating in here? Very quickly, there are thoughts in your mind of, and where can we take this? So this is, I'm imagining something even better here. And that follows up very, very rapidly. Immediately following that, yeah, you can tell me in a minute whether this is making sense. Immediately following that, you are looking at the numbers. What's the reality of the situation? What do the numbers tell us? And then from that, you're already getting a sense that now we've put those things in place. Actually, I want to make this fun, and I want to make sure everybody's enjoying the journey as we go. After that, it's, oh yeah, and the people. Let's make sure that the people themselves are looked after, that they're doing what they love doing, that we're caring and nurturing the team. And after all of that, it's like, right, let's get it done. Is that the sort of conversation that goes on in your head as you're approaching something new?
Like exactly the way that one of the business leaders sat me down and said, I have something very early on. He said, Pat told me to speak to you. I have something you might be able to help us with. I sat down with him. He said, you can definitely help us with this. And then it followed on exactly that way. Exactly that way. And then it culminated in this client meeting where she said, clearly you know exactly what you're talking about. Now we need to move forward with how this will work. It's exactly that. It was sort of, I think, quite amazed that you said you really understood this quickly. Not only that, you did a great presentation, which was much more detailed than we anticipated. And you should be the person actually speaking in the meeting because you really know what you've done. And I think I do get to a kind of bigger picture quite quickly.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is interesting. So just to kind of summarize on that, it's always good to hear that. And even though there's only small differences between these, as I said, your sovereign's kicking in at 7.5. The mystic is 7.2. There's only a tiny gap between the two. And yet the archetype profile really does show that, yes, but this one will lead first. Then it'll defer to this one. And once you're satisfied there, you'll move to the next lot of thoughts. And it's of course, our thoughts do go from one thing to another, but there's really a sense of clarity that the simple graphic will produce. And the great thing is you can do this for anybody on your team as well. And you can say, okay, it'd be helpful for me to understand what drives this person's thoughts so that when it comes to presenting something new, when it comes to raising a challenging question or an issue, even a performance issue, then you can say, okay, knowing what's important to this person would help me to communicate better with them. And if you're speaking, for example, with somebody who's dominantly warrior, it helps to go in with warrior language to connect with them, to build that rapport, to show them that you're on their side and you understand their world. And then you can start introducing some of the other things. But from a leadership perspective, knowing that you're really strong across the board is a reassurance. If you were leading me on something, I would just say, yep, this is somebody who I would love to have running the show, because they know each area well enough. They can speak to the warrior's language. They can speak to the lover, the connection person, nurturing type of thing, but they're also happy to have some fun. And and they don't forget the numbers, and they've still got imagination. And overall, they will take responsibility for the whole realm. And they're not going to abdicate. They're going to make sure stuff is done properly. So it's a great profile, I must say. It's really.
You loved it when we met. I think it's fascinating what you do. I still maintain, Pat, that I would love to do this with the kids. But they arrived today from Dublin, and they're such strong kids and so strong-willed that I can see how this would benefit children and teenagers who are not sure what their feelings are. Why do they react some way? I think it'd be amazing in terms of making them feel so much stronger for the reasons why they're different, the reasons why they react in certain ways to things. I think it's just fascinating.
Yeah. So it's a lot of fun, and it's serious fun in the sense that it really does. It kind of, I find it does provide insight, but it does it in such an accessible kind of way. And I've had, people who are married to their profiling tools, fine. They understand the language of those tools. It will help any profiling tool pretty much. If it's lasted a few years, it's probably got something good in it. I just find with this model, it works from 5-year-olds. And I was doing a school assembly just a couple months ago, and we had some guys up on stage. The youngest of them was probably 7 or 8. And then we had 3 of them up on stage acting out each of these characters, and we were discussing what that means for them, and they got it straight away. In fact, the guy who this little kid, the youngest of all, this little boy, and I gave him the warrior, and so we had him standing up on stage saying things like "finish the job" and "get out of my way." And afterwards, when everybody was filing out, I could see him literally holding his fist like this. He just went, "That was amazing." And I'm wondering what conversations. I only just had some feedback. I said that the staff room was buzzing. The teachers just saying what an impact that had, and the kids were talking about it for days afterwards. It works. It touches something primal, but it's not primitive. It's just what makes us tick at that level, and to clarify it with these characters is just, I found it just so helpful. That's why I major on this, is because it works. It taps into that from the kids through to, board level. It helps to elevate these things.
Driven, or why people are not. In fact, it shows why some people are just simply not driven by their careers, but they could be the most incredibly organized and have a crazy personal life, but they're not driven in their careers. It's not where they're much more about family or about their, I have a couple of friends like that. Their social lives are 100% managed like machines, but their jobs are just go ahead, whatever you want me to do, I'll do. I can't do either. Christian, my husband, looks around going, what am I doing here? Because you do everything. Well, we work, it just works.
Yeah. And I think this is one of the key things. It's like, we're not all expected to have a leadership profile. We're not all expected to have a super balance across the board. We're not all expected to be like 10s on all of these archetypes. I think we're intentionally different. And the first thing when I'm working with teams, the first thing is to say, guys, it's self-awareness time. This is why you are the way that you are. And actually, that's a really good thing. The second thing is respect for each other. Recognize that though Freddie here is super strong on the sage and will always come in first of all and try and just say, yeah, but where's the evidence? Where's the evidence? Where's the evidence? And show me the numbers. And he needs past precedents to kind of to show the value of what we've got and where we're going. You'll always base it on the past because the sage is super strong there. Well, let's not reject Freddie's input because actually there's a place for that. It's just that we would also like him to be aware that there are other ways of seeing things. So self-awareness, and then respect for each other and the contribution that you bring. Ultimately, it's up to the leader of that team to introduce what is most relevant to get the job done. And it may be that he has to play down something, she needs to elevate something up here, in order to ensure that this ship keeps running in the right way. So fascinating stuff there. What do you think in terms of going forward? You've kind of been given your territory here. Is there any one of these archetypal characters that you feel like, actually, I still want more of that? Or do you feel like, no, because I can move between these quite well? There are some people that won't be satisfied until they're a 9 or a 10. I kind of get scared when I see 10s. I kind of think that anybody who's really hitting the max on any one of these, they're super driven, but probably a little bit overdriven with something there. I don't know how you feel about the profile that you're seeing, because there's definitely leadership, definitely really good balance means that you can plug into wherever people are at and communicate with them. But just thinking about the future days, you've gone through a shift, you're in a new territory. It's usually not the best time for a question of this sort. It's usually like a couple of years down the road that a question of this sort is a bit more pertinent. But I'm interested because you are a woman of vision. And the sovereign and the mystic both have that future view driving them.
I always do. And I think what I'm looking for in my future is I want to see some real success, in face of what we've gone through in this country in the last 3 years, 4 years, whatever. And I want to feel that both personally and professionally. I want to feel like I'm back on top and not feeling vulnerable in either personal or professional or in my country or in my, in my relationships. So many of my European friends have left, and I've got a whole new set of friends. I've got I really do. I've got a whole new kind of social circle as a result of Brexit.
Wow.
And so a lot, like 50% of my friendships are now on FaceTime and Skype to South Africa or to Canada or to Germany. It's a strange time. Yeah, it is. And I want to see that. I want to see that back on top. I want to see, I don't know, maybe the flexibility now is so important to me. The opportunity to still lead is so important to me, and how I can work those two together is probably where my aim is. It's how is to lead and be really out there in the industry and out there with all of my colleagues, but not necessarily tied to a desk, And I think I found myself in the right place for that, but I have to see where that leads, because I do find sometimes I want to take control of things and they go, okay, you don't need to take control of that. Not just because I know I can. So I have to sort of let it go and go, okay, fine, you go ahead. And then I see it moving off course and think I need to take control again. So I probably want to, I probably want to see that increase with Murphy Cobb, because as far as I can see, this could be, this is a long-term opportunity for me. And there's an opportunity to grow and grow and grow and grow and grow. I mean, there's nothing to stop it from growing as a in the market that we're in now. So I want to do that.
So that's really encouraging. You found a place where you can thrive, and to highlight that, where the sovereign and the mystic can thrive together, especially because you can also then bring in the other characters to play their role, but particularly those two drivers, sovereign and mystic. I mean, you've got that with, it's to be honest, I was going to say Richard Branson, but he's more of that sovereign lover type, first off. And then there's a mix of the sage and the mystic in there as he thinks of new stuff. And actually, most of the ideas he's promoting are not his ideas. They're other people bring them to him. But the team side of Virgin is really, really important to him and to the whole culture. But of course, he's sovereign. He is running the show. He makes those ultimate decisions, but he leans on others to keep this stuff together. But actually, it's a bit more of a Steve Jobs thing here, where you've got the sovereign and the mystic, where it's like constantly imagining something new.
What's next?
Always what's next. But you ground that because the sage is strong. The lover is strong with the people side of things. The sage is strong with, does reality back up my current thinking, and how can we use that to build something stronger, rather than those people who are total mystic. I mean, Jobs was often accused of having his, reality distortion field. That's what happens with the mystic if it's not balanced with the sage. But of course, he plugs into somebody like Wozniak, who gives him the ability to balance stuff up and get real about what it takes to push this thing forward. You've already got that as part of your character. So you can go there. The challenge that you've got is that halfway through a conversation in your own head, you will hear the mystic talking about where can we go, and just imagine. And at the same time, the sage is going, yeah, but okay, but let's get real here. And you've got the challenge of the tension because they're all so strong. Does that expose something going?
I mean, it's like, sometimes it's kind of, slow down, Kath, we can't get there that quickly. And I think, why not? Because actually we understand what they want. So let's just forget what we were talking about with them and let's go big. Which is quite funny, because I've always talked about it in meetings all years about how I can see the end result, or what is required in the end result, or what success would look like. I don't necessarily see how we're going to get there yet, but I do see it. So let's work from there and work backwards. And that scares people because they like to see things in bite-sized chunks.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a fascinating way in which we approach things. It's fascinating to see how our minds are geared based around our values, and then the outworking of that. It should give us a steer about the types of people that we need at what point to help push this thing through. So the sages and the warriors are it's important that the sovereign will set the scene and will give a sense of more to do with how we're going to do it as a culture, as an organization, whereas the sages will be a lot more specific about, these are the specific process-driven linear steps we're going to take, and then the warrior just forces it through and makes it happen. Warriors have got to be skilled, but they will add the force to it. Whereas there are some mystics that just spend forever in woo-woo land, and they're just sort of up on the clouds and having lots of ideas, and they think that the work is getting the idea. And in a sense it is, but you need the guys to force it through to make it happen. Sometimes I'm guilty of that. Very strong with the mystic, and by the time I start putting things in place and the mystic wants to step up, I've had enough of that warrior thing. I want to do more mysticky imagination and ideas. It gets like, no, we haven't finished the last one. So we got to implement and make it real. And so that's the bit that I need to work on, which is why when I realized I needed more of that warrior to keep at it, to keep developing specific skills, to focus on execution. rather than on imagination, because that came easily. So this is where I hooked up with a former major from the SAS and asked him to be my mentor, because I wanted somebody who was the consummate. I just thought, well, if I need warrior, where do I go for warrior?
Brilliant.
Military, okay, but why not go for the absolute top end of the game? And so, asked him, and he said, yeah, why not? It's like, okay, good. So I was warrior enough to push it through to the place where I got a warrior on my side.
Wow.
So that's changed. That's it rubs off on you. For me, I needed that to be around people who had that character, because you can learn about them, you can read about them, you can get quite a bit from biographies and just interactions at that sort of secondhand level. There's nothing like having it firsthand, and just sitting there in a catch-up meeting. There's no messing. There's no excuses.
Yeah.
It's like, was it done? How was it done? How are you going to do this? Did you do what you said you would do? And it's not just accountability. That I don't just cheapening it, but it's really getting real and getting tough. And it did what I wanted it to do. Pulled me up sharp. Wow. So where next then for you? We've just got a couple of minutes before we time out on this call. But in terms of this sort of profile for you, you've talked a little bit about it's more, and there's growth, and you're in a growth role for the organization, but also for you as an individual, there's an opportunity to grow the sphere and the territory. What else is coming to mind as you look at what makes you tick and how that can be applied? I
really love growth, but I do want to level off to a point where I'm doing more of a management role and managing the staff and the overall company, because growth can be quite sort of specific, where the whole focus is just on get new clients, and you sort of lose sight of the management of the people and the staff and being part of the whole ecosystem. So, and I think there's a limited time of people that are in a growth role, really. And I mean, it could be a few years when you can see a real change in the business. But then by that point, you're likely in front of clients who want to see more of you anyway. And if you're in a growth role, you're never in front of clients. And it's a small enough business in a consultancy to be in a growth role and be in front of clients and implement something, and then have the clients ask that you're more present. So I think that's probably our aim. I'd like to be.
Interesting.
I love operations. Operations for me is all about process. I love it, and I'm very strong in process, and I love to see things working. So I think there's a lot of places around with Murphy Cobb that I can find myself in, as usual, making the role my own. That's what I need to do.
Yeah. And so the sage is strong enough in you. It indicates that the process is very much in mind. It's like facts, process, reality. That's there.
I love to work within a framework, and then you can deviate from it as long as your framework is strong. You can go off here and go off here, but you need to keep that strong framework, and that's something I want to work more with them on.
Yeah, and so seeing that the jester is strong there, and then the lover, those are kind of swinging over to those right brain types. It's like the sage may be strong, the sovereign may be strong, but you're willing to entertain, gestured language, the possibilities of deviation, whereas the sage will be like, no, we have a process, we have a precedent, this is how it works, and we will stick to it and just make sure the warriors do that thing, whereas for you it's like, no, well, that's great, and let's try this and let's try that, and let's see what else we can throw in, what spices can we chuck into this stew to do something different this time. Why not? So
I'm a corporate entrepreneur, is I like to have a business behind me. I don't necessarily want to run my own business, but I love to have a business behind me where I can bring in the entrepreneurial, and that's what this is. This business is run by an entrepreneur since 2006, and he welcomes anyone that comes in to say, why don't we try this? And he goes, okay, let's try that. So it's the right place to be able to do that. I just need to, and they're very honest, and we're all very open, so I can talk to any of them about it. So it's just about what happens next? And I think that they're probably going, Kath, you only joined us less than 2 months ago. What do you mean, what's next? But I'm pushing them to say what happens in 2020. I mean, I want to know. I want to put a plan in place. I want to put start getting some of these interesting people at events, and I want to run the, go to all these events and start doing some white papers and all sorts of things.
Mm-hmm. Excellent.
Running all the time.
Yeah, but it's a drive in you. It's always like a calling or a drive. I think it's sometimes both, isn't it? It's we this is the way we do life, and there are some people that can find that position in their professional life where it really, now here's the field, thrive with it. I think those agricultural models, I keep going back to them. As you say, growth, but there's a point at which you have to say, actually, this is our field. It's doing very well year after year. Let's just keep plowing, sowing the seed, fertilizing it, watering it, and harvesting it. And then we go back to the beginning, and we carry on, and we carry on, and we carry on. If you neglect the field, it will go fallow. It will start, reduction in yield. And so, that's a very useful model, I find, is just keep going back. If this was a field, sorry, I missed that.
That's precisely what happened in my last company, is it wasn't nurtured and then eventually closed. So, and I just do not want to see that happen again. And so I am very driven.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, look, that's been a fascinating conversation. We are ticking away with the seconds here, but I'm sure we're going to continue this offline as well in different ways. But fascinating to have that conversation with you, to catch up with where you are and how this profile really fits where you're at now and where you're planning on going. It's brilliant. Yeah. So thanks for that, and the Kath. I'll close off here, but I'll ping you a note and we'll follow up in just a moment. That's great. Thanks. Bye-bye. Bye. So there you have an insider's view of one of these signature impact consultations, where we understand all 6 archetypes and how they're impacting somebody's life, and how a shift and a change there could seriously help them to move significantly further forward in their chosen field. These archetype profiles will enable you to zero in on the specific character traits that you need to develop, or at least become aware of, in order to move forward without hindrances, without feeling stuck. This is where we diagnose and discover the hidden code to your unique personal strengths, the next step to your path to purpose and to profit. So I really do encourage you now to book your session with me online. teamme.com/impact gives you the details and the link. So go there now, book your session with me, and we will have an amazing time of unpacking who you really are, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and defining a path to go forward, as well as giving you some of the tools there and then that you can pick up and utilize to create your signature impact.